YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back after a wild Thursday night football game between the Packers and the Cardinals. The Packers pull it off. The Cardinals finally lose. Somebody finally takes them down. I'm here to give you my takeaways. This video getting up a little later than I wanted to. A lot of rumors out there about the trade deadline. We'll have you covered for that. We have some videos already up. Definitely more to come. Follow our Twitter for those constant updates there. But yeah, just going to give you my takeaways like we do for every Thursday night game. We break down the Sunday games on Monday. We also have full NFL coverage, weekly picks, power rankings, and a lot more. So check it out. Here's our Twitter. Unfortunate injury news. We got some, Mark Ingram news, an extension, the trade details. A lot goes into that. It was odd what happened there. A lot of names popping up, whether teams are shopping them or they're getting calls in terms of the trade deadline. So check it out. To the game here. I like sleeping on the game and gathering my takeaways and revisiting some things because I always have more takeaways then. And I knew this right when the game ended or during the game. The big reason the Packers won. There was a lot of weird things that happened in this game, and there was a lot of luck involved on every NFL game on both sides. If the Cardinals would have pulled that off in the end, it would have felt like they were lucky once again. If the Packers did pull it off, there was something. Rondale Moore muffin that punt, and that was a bad one, by the way. You can't try to catch a punt fully extended. He knew he touched it, had a shot to cover it, so that was brutal there. But yeah, the Packers, why they actually won this game is defensive game plan first. I think that's the big thing. It only showed in the first half, but that was the big thing. They threw the Cardinals off their game. They made the Cardinals have to adjust. The Cardinals aren't used to that. They were able to play this Kyler Murray scramble around and bomb the ball downfield. And I talk about it every week, Murray basically creates separation, not the receivers, because he buys so much time. Anybody can get separation that long of a play. And everything's downfield. Everything's long developing downfield. And that did not really exist in this game. DeAndre Hopkins had a big catch early that was downfield. That was a ridiculous play by him. Fooled Eric Stokes on that, kind of with his body. So that was a great play. But other than that, they really threw the Cardinals off. So defensive game plan and what they're actually calling play-by-play, that interception that went off Rondale Moore's hands, a tough catch. Murray kind of just panicked and bullied that one in there. It's kind of on both of them there. But it's really – and then it got tipped up and then picked off with the Packers, so they were fortunate where the ball ended up. But that is credit to the defense there. It's a great blitz call, and they were kind of getting in the Cardinals' heads, throwing them off their game. And they put them in that situation, kind of backed up in their own end. Defensive game plan, and then controlled the clock mainly in the second half. They pounded the football, even on passing attempts. It was screen passes, small ball, finding Tunyon open, who ended up getting hurt, unfortunate, in the middle of the field, which continued to roll the clock, and the running game was working. They saw Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon were lighting it up. It was a bad matchup for the Cardinals, looked like, especially A.J. Dillon. So he was extremely impressive. The first guy just rarely could make the tackle for the Cardinals defense. So that is why the Packers won this game, is because their defensive game plan and they controlled the clock on top of that. Even though the defense of the Packers didn't really look that great in the second half because the Cardinals adjusted, people may not look at it and say, oh, yeah, the defense won the game. But, if you realize what they did in the first half, the Cardinals really only can play, and I can't even say their game. They really only could play in the second half, and it wasn't really their game. They had to adjust and play small ball, quick. The running game was working. They needed to run the ball more. So you see my positives and negatives kind of listed there briefly in key words for the Cardinals. Second half offense was good, and credit to Kingsbury for the adjustments you had. And I was saying at halftime, they got to play small ball. They got to run the ball more. And they started doing that, and they started to have success. They started to score. Last year, Kingsbury really couldn't do that. He took a lot of criticism last year because teams started to figure out a game plan for the Cardinals, and we see that in this game. They started to figure out a game plan for the Cardinals, and they don't look as good as they did first half of the year, but they have the ability to, just by adjusting the game plan, the play calls on the fly. Kingsbury couldn't do that last year. He did it in this game, and that's why they had a burst in offense. The small ball was working. Every time they tried to throw the ball downfield, it didn't work, and that's because the Packers played a lot of soft coverage. They played off, and they just kind of just stick on their guy. And they did a good job containing Kyler Murray as well. I put the adjustments kind of in the middle there because the second half adjustments for the Cardinals offensively were great. It's obviously what needed to be done. It just happened too late. It's something that kind of needed to happen And they had a whole half of football with the good adjustments, but it's something that kind of happened a little too late, and it's very tough to do it without the halftime break, but it needed to. It needed to happen in the second quarter, and they would have won this game because the Packers just had the perfect defense out there for them. So they need to do the change. And I know DeAndre Hopkins came out. DeAndre Hopkins is a great player. They're obviously better with him. You saw that big play he had, but the offense doesn't change because DeAndre Hopkins is off the field. But the offense actually needed to change because what the defense was giving them. So I thought that was interesting. So the first half offense was kind of a mess just because they couldn't play their game. Credit to the Packers defense. The players, but mainly I think the game plan and the actual play call, the play choices on defense there within the game. The run was working. I know they were playing from behind. That's a tough part. They did need to run the ball more, but it kind of came to a point where the Packers were holding the ball for so long that it was tough for the Cardinals to run the ball because that would have ran the clock. But I do think they could have started that a little earlier, and that kind of goes into the lack of adjustments early on. And the run defense kind of let them down, which kind of resulted in the Packers being able to run that clock. So you do see it. You kind of replay this in my head, get my takeaways. The Packers did outplay the Cardinals by a bit. They didn't dominate them, nowhere close to that. And the Cardinals actually, and that's kind of the good thing for the Cardinals. They got thrown off their game, which is a good and a bad thing. The good is they got thrown, it's not good to be thrown off your game. You get thrown off your game, guys get hurt. I know the Packers had some key guys hurt, obviously, or out, I should say, because Devontae Adams isn't hurt, Lazard's not hurt. But and you still, they were very, very, very close to winning that game. I actually thought they were going to pull it off in the end. And if they went to overtime, it's tough to say because I know who gets the ball first has a better shot. But I would have picked overtime starting. No play has run yet. I didn't see the coin flip. I'd pick the Cardinals to win just because they made those adjustments. They figured out what needed to be done. I think the Cardinals would have won the game. It's an assumption. I'm not guaranteeing anything. But so even kind of getting thrown off their game. The entire game, again, I keep going back to that. They made the correct adjustments, but that still wasn't their game, which is okay. You had to make those adjustments, right? And they still could have won the game. And it's why, it's because they're a very good team. That's why. The bad part of that is they were thrown off their game a bit. It was the perfect game plan with really, Rasul Douglas is barely on the Packers. He had a great game. They're missing some of their guys out there as well. Jair Alexander's, Darius Smith in terms of the pass rush. And they still have the perfect game plan. So other teams will take that film and they will use that. And it'll just, and the Cardinals will figure it out like they figured out in the second half of this game. But can the Cardinals beat us with a half of football? That's how teams are going to look at it, and the Cardinals will do that. They will do that. The Packers are a very good team, so the Cardinals will do that too. They will beat those teams, and it might not always be successful or ever be successful with teams using that game plan, but it just takes away that deep ball and more of that Kyler Murray scrambling, which has been kind of elite. So if you take that away, then maybe they aren't the best team in football anymore, So that's kind of a tough thing about the Cardinals. We saw that last year too, where they were really good. Even in games they lost early, they looked really good. In the second half of the year, they got figured out, and then it wasn't working, but it's mainly because they weren't able to adjust within the game. This year, I don't think that same thing will happen. That'll be something. They're going to make the playoffs, and they're definitely a better team this year. But you start to see maybe, teams could start to figure them out a little bit, but on top of that, again, they still almost pulled this game off there. Yet to the Packers, I talked about the key things there. Defensive game plan, controlled the clock, and that kind of goes into running the game. The running game went into controlling the clock, obviously. The play calling overall was good because they were able to control that clock. No Devontae Adams. Without Devontae Adams, their offense actually changes. And they didn't have much of a pass game. Receivers weren't getting a whole lot of separation. So pretty much to win this game against a really good team that could beat you with just a half of football, like we said, you had to control the clock. And that's what other teams try to do too. The Browns try to do it, but the Cardinals just got that game out of hand right away, And the Packers successfully did it because of the certain play calls and the players running hard, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. And good play action passes, smart plays by Rodgers, kind of throwing the ball inbounds and checking the correct plays. So overall, the play calls were good, but when they got in the red zone, after they got a turnover, I think it was on the muff punt, they didn't run the ball a single time, so that was questionable. And then at the end, when we thought the game was wrapped up, they went for it on fourth down. They called some weird pass play. I think you kind of just need to maybe run the ball or give them more of a high percentage play. That's just me, just how close they were to the end zone there. So that play wasn't even close. And credit to the Cardinals, even though the defense struggled a little bit in this game and allowed the clock to run, I talk about all year, they're very good in the red zone. They're very good in those short yardage, third, fourth down situations. Very good. It's why they won the 49ers game, and they'll play the 49ers coming up actually again. And they got the ball back, and then the Cardinals were able to move back down the clock. But going back and why the Packers kind of stopped themselves, the play clock management. The delay of games or close to delay of games. They had to waste timeouts. That was pretty bad. They had a delay of game that made, if they didn't get that last delay of game, they probably win the game. But again, the Cardinals are so stout, in those situations. So who knows? But I guess we'll chalk that up to, not having the right receivers. Those guys got to be ready still, and they can't let it happen. But at the same time, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers always do that. They wind the play clock down to 1 second. They snap it on 0. They do that a lot, and I guess it just didn't work this time around. Again, maybe because guys weren't adjusting, moving around where they needed to be on the, in the Cardinals defense, giving good looks. Credit to the Cardinals for creating that. But that was a little sloppy. Cardinals are moving down the field. I thought the 2-minute warning was interesting. They clearly stopped the game for a 2-minute warning, but it was the shortest. They barely stopped it. It was the shortest 2-minute warning of all time. Like no break. I've never seen that. That was confusing. I don't know if it affected I don't think it affected the game. It kind of hurt both teams there because the Packers defense was kind of gassed. The Cardinals were getting down the field, and then more of a normal break would have helped them there. So it hurt the Packers, but then hurt the Cardinals because all of a sudden they were going to run out of time. The play clock was going, and it was like there should have been way more of a pause. So it kind of hurt them to hurry up as well, which didn't really affect them, I guess. So that was odd. I don't know if I've ever seen that. And then everyone talking about that ball spot. I don't think I've ever seen that, too. Every game we see bad spots that result in a first down or that should have resulted in first down. It wasn't just bad spots in general. But that ball was spotted actually perfect, and they still gave the first down and didn't review it. So that was odd. You don't really see that much. And then the whole A.J. Green play, everybody ripping A.J. Green. And yeah, that's definitely on him, but you still, because he was kind of blocking there, and he didn't know, he wasn't, there was some confusion. I don't know what made him confused. Something had to happen to make him confused. He just didn't know the ball was there. Maybe it would have been a touchdown. It was pretty tight coverage, though. It probably would have been incomplete if I would think if he was looking still. And yeah, first thought, did Murray have to throw that? He blindly threw it, but that's supposed to be kind of a timing play, so you can't really. The throw was there too, it was accurate, so you can't really wait to see if AJ Green in this case is ready for Kyler Murray to throw it. So you can't put it on him there. Maybe it was a little risky, though, because it was tight coverage. Again, kind of going back to, I think if this game went to overtime, I would pick the Cardinals. Who knows what happened? The Packers could have got the ball first and then ran the ball down their throats and went and scored a touchdown. Very, very, very possible. But the way the second half was going, the Cardinals adjusting correctly on offense, and how good their defense is in red zone, I probably would pick the Cardinals to win overtime. So they didn't really need to force things. I think they could have sent it to overtime. Of course, they wanted to score, and they felt like they could score. So I'm not taking a shot at them for taking that shot at all. But they could have been a little more careful because I think they would have been confident about overtime as well. So you can criticize them a little bit for that. Wild game, though. Yeah, a lot of luck from both sides involved. A lot of guys out of this game to start. A lot of guys going out during the game, so that was tough. But I do think the Packers did outplay them for most of this game because of the game plan on both sides. Game plan was to play a little bit of soft coverage and not allow Murray to scramble a bit. And it's really the only team. The 49ers did a good job against the Cardinals, but it's really the only team that did it correctly. I think the 49ers the players played very well on defense. This game, players played well, but I thought it was more of the game plan and decisions on. There wasn't a lot of changes, play by play, but I thought it was a heck of a job in the coaching staff of the Packers to correctly game plan defense and the game plan to run the clock and successfully doing it. Credit to the running backs. Aaron Rodgers even had involvement in that. Keeping the ball in bounds and making smart decisions. The Packers won it off that. So curious to see, how teams will game plan for the Cardinals going forward. I definitely think we'll see some similar looks. Can the Cardinals overcome it? Can they adjust quicker? Because it felt like they only had a half to play here, and they still almost won the game. So we'll see. Definitely was an interesting Thursday night game. A lot of good games I can't wait for this Sunday. A lot of potential upsets, I think, in terms of the lines, underdogs that can win. So I'm really excited about that. We have you covered on Twitter. We have you covered here. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. All that be much appreciated. Any link you're looking for, that'll be down, pinned in the comments or in the description section of any video. It's going to do it, though. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.